Hello. Good morning, class.
Morning, sir.
Okay. A pleasant morning to you all. Nice meeting you once again. Happy Sunday.
Same to you, sir.
Uh, we have no time to waste because this is 11 minutes past. So I intentionally was because of people that join class late. So let's kickstart our lecture. They will join us and they can have the recorded version on YouTube. And management will send this to them. So uh, we are looking at governance today. I decided to ship in governance. So it won't be all through strategy. So the other aspect of strategy, we are going to do it upper week because next weekend will be for case study. So can we start our class? I need your permission.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay,
Go
thank
ahead,
you.
sir.
Thank you. So our lecture of today will be on governance. I wish we can do justice to in the next 2 hours. Um, to start with, what is the meaning of corporate governance? Corporate governance is defined in the Cadbury report of 1992. In the Cadbury report of 1992, as a system by which companies are directed and controlled. And no matter the number of books that we read, no matter the number of literatures that we study, you still discover that the summary of their definition of corporate governance still points to this: that corporate governance is the system by which companies are directed and controlled. That's the entire meaning of corporate governance. And the very reason why I don't overload you with definitions. So if that one is taken, we have to know that corporate governance should not be confused with management. There are two things entirely. Corporate governance should not be confused with management. Why? Because management is concerned with the running of the business operations of a company, whereas governance is about giving a lead, monitoring, supervision, and controlling management decisions of the company. At the same time, we can see that management is about making business decisions, while corporate governance, is about monitoring and controlling that decision that was taken, as well as giving leadership and directions. So, therefore, if management if management is about running businesses, governance is about seeing that that business is run properly. So we can now conclude that corporate governance is not about management activities and management skills and techniques. Rather, it focuses on the power of the executive management to direct a business is a major aspect of corporate governance. So above all, we must know that corporate governance is concerned with matters such as: one, in whose interest is a company governed? And when we are asked of this question, our simple and direct answer is that the company must be governed in the interest of the owners that we regarded as the shareholders, because they are the investors that have invested their sweat capital. They finance, manage, and nurture the business. So whosoever that is appointed as the chairman, board of directors, executive and non-executive directors, including all the support staff. They must run the company in the interest of the shareholders. So when we are being asked in whose interest is a company governed, this one of the fundamental aspect of corporate governance. It should be governed in the interest of the shareholder. Two, who has the power to make decisions for a company? Once appointed, the shareholders has empowered the directors to make decisions for a company. And in some cases where they have fundamental issues like that, that should be decided in the board of directors meeting. And instances do occur, this might require the engagement of the shareholders, but the directors have the power to make decisions for a company. Three, for what aims or purposes are those powers used? Those powers are used to make profits, maximize the profit and wealth of the shareholders. The powers are used to ensure effective corporate governance oversight. Those powers are used to see to uh, improve in the portfolio of investment of the companies. So the power are used to make the company to achieve their pre-stated goals, to be competitive, innovative, and the power must be used for the interest of the business and not for personal gains of any director or staff. So in what manner are those powers used? This power has to be used with equity and justice. The
Good morning,
power
sir.
must. Hello, good morning.
So, sorry, which topic is this, sir? I just joined the class due to network issues, sir.
Governance. We are teaching governance. Is part of the model aspect, the theoretical aspect of SFM.
Okay.
All
Thank you,
this
sir.
why we'll be thinking strategy. We still have some topics left in strategy. I know, but I just want to also have uh, a taste of another topic today instead of strategy, because we are still going to look at the risk management. Is that
Okay, sir.
taken?
Thank you, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So having looked at those aspects that governance is all about, then the separation of ownership from control. These are just the elementary things that we have to know about governance. The separation of ownership from control. So let's look at the separation of ownership from control. But before we look at that, we should know that that caption, separation of ownership from control, ownership belongs to the shareholders that owns the company, that have equity share and interest in the company. While that control belongs to the appointed directors that are expected to monitor, supervise, control activities in the company towards achieving the goals of the company and sustainable growth. So under the separation of ownership from control, see, problem arise with corporate governance because of the separation of ownership of a company from control of the company. And the law too, this is a basic feature of company law. The reason why the problem arises is that by the time the company is duly registered, it has commenced operation. It is stated in law that there must be directors that will be appointed to govern the business. But we have some instances whereby some of the shareholders too might be a member of the board of directors or what have you. That one will limit the number of crises, misappropriation of the company's fraud, and deficiency in corporate oversight. But anytime we separate the ownership for control, that we have appointed directors to run the management of the company, majority of these directors always put their interests first, because the law has stated that once they have been appointed, we give them that power to act independently. They can make personal judgment, but that judgment they are making should be for the whole interest of the company and the owner of the business. So a company A company is a legal person. Once it is duly registered, it has become a legal person that live artificial life separate from the owner of the business. So in law, a company exists independently of its shareholders. And I think we all know that. Who owns it? So the constitution of a company usually delegates the power to manage a company to its board of directors. So the board of directors too, by capacity of their position, they have the power to delegate. They delegate responsibility to subordinate, they delegate responsibility to constituted committees. We have a lot of committees: finance committee, risk committee, remuneration committee, and the rest. So the directors can delegate responsibility to all these committees too, and they report directly to him. So in a way, the directors have a very strong influence in any organization. I've put it there. The directors have strong influence in an organization. So what are these problems that arise that I mentioned? Having looked at the preambles, the problem arising from separation of ownership and control. These are things that we know. So let's quickly look at this. The separation of ownership and control creates problem for good corporate governance because of the following reason. One, the director of a company might be able to run the company in a way that is not in the best interest of the shareholders. We have seen many cases like that, locally, internationally, regionally, and what have you. That some of the directors derail, some of the directors engage in insubordination of interest. Majority of them are even investing secretly in some assets that are meant to be the assets of the company. And this is as a result of the fact that they have been empowered to manage, control, supervise activities in the company. So it is highly unethical, it is wrong, it is punishable under law if truly detected and litigation is filed. And that can even lead to the removal of the directors. So you can see another problem that arises from the separation of power, ownership, and control since we have put them. Because the shareholders might not be able to prevent the directors from some anomalies, menace, misappropriation of funds, because the directors have most of the power to control what the company does. But we can limit this problem with this number three. When the shareholders of a company are also its directors, problems with corporate governance are much less likely to arise. Definitely to arise, but since we have some of the shareholders being part of the board of directors, then this problem will reduce and there will be check and balances too. Equally, when a company is controlled by majority shareholder, problems with governance are also unlikely to occur. And that's the more reason why some companies they always ensure that they have the members of the company that is share agency or whatever forms of crisis that can come as a result of governance in the organization. But another important thing that we have to know is that the problems with corporate governance generally arise when a company has many different shareholders. And despite the fact that they have many shareholders, what happens? There is no majority shareholders. So when there is no majority shareholders, the appointed directors can capitalize on this because they have full information about the constitution of the shareholders and the rest. So they can take advantage of this. Okay, let's proceed. Moving gradually because I want you to have a very good understanding of this background so that there is no way the examiner will set question that will not get it right. So we are proceeding. From there now, we move to some major topics. Corporate governance laws and guidelines. So what the syllabus require here is that the students should have an understanding and ability to differentiate between bad governance and good governance. I wish I know at this level, even without even reading any book, we can be able to do justice to that. Bad governance. Bad governance occur when an entity, company, is governed in a way that is inconsistent with certain concepts and practice. That means under governance, anything that the appointed board of directors of the companies are doing, it must be in compliance with stipulated laws. It must be in compliance with stipulated laws. It must be in compliance with laws, be it rule-based laws or principle-based law. They must not do anything that is contrary to code of corporate governance and some other laws. They mustn't. So bad governance occur when there is lack of compliance. So we should equally know that bad governance can occur. Bad governance can occur due to deficiency in corporate oversight. So bad governance can equally occur when the director of the company, bad governance means a company is governed in the interest of the directors, which is supposed not to be. When the directors of the company, it is the interest of the directors of the company that they put first, rather than in the best interest of the owners. That is what we call bad governance. At the same time, you must know that good governance is the opposite of all these poor corporate governance that we talk about. So good governance is based on certain key concepts and practices. And what we call a good governance is one, compliance to laws, regulations, code of corporate governance, ethical conduct, environmental sustainability law, agency law. That must be compliance with all this. In a good governance too, there should be transparency, accountability, and probity. We have to act with integrity. And we must put the interests of the shareholders above all other interests. Anywhere there is conflicting interest under governance, the shareholders are encouraged to open up and express their interest. If it's something that the company can make provision for the shareholders, they will do that, rather than acting secretly by putting your own interest first. So having looked at that, we must have an idea of what we call Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, because it still have relevance up to today. And in most of the correspondence, be it syllabus or whatever in ICAN 2, you will see them mentioning Sarbanes-Oxley, any aspect of the corporate governance theories. So the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2022 was introduced in USA as a measure to reduce the crisis of corporate governance. And this act that we call Sarbanes-Oxley was primarily introduced immediately after the sudden collapse sudden bankrupt, distress, or some of the global multinational companies that nobody ever expected that in the next 20 decades they can collapse. But this company collapsed due to bad governance. And that's the reason why I informed you that Sarbanes-Oxley Act 2022 of USA was introduced as a range of legal issues designed to improve the quality of corporate governance in United States. And all other countries are embracing it. It's not limited to United States, even in Nigeria too. So following this, the spectacular collapse, you can see the word, spectacular collapse of several large corporations, among which are Enron, and WorldCom. These are powerful companies, listed companies, but they collapse as a result of bad corporate governance. So as a result of that, all other countries too now develop our own corporate governance that will guide both private, listed company, and many more, including the United Kingdom. United Kingdom have their own. Nigeria too have their own. In Singapore, in Canada, across the globe. So corporate governance was developed since that 2002. And even those that have it in place, they have to review it. They make it to be more stricter. They have to compel all organizations to abide with it. So the corporate governance law is compulsory to all organizations to abide, but except the principle-based law, which we are going to do later. We are going to look at the approaches to corporate governance as a topic this morning. So the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance for the Private Sector 2028 was prepared by the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. And of what use is this? This Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance requires that companies should comply with the principles and provision of the code, because it is very important. Without abiding, without compliance with all these principles and laws, directors will just mismanage the investment of all the shareholders. So to put an end to all this premature death of companies, premature collapse of company, so that's the reason why all these principles and laws guiding corporate governance was published. And you can even see the second point here, that listed companies in the United Kingdom are required to comply with the UK Corporate Governance Code. So I mentioned it to you. In Singapore, in Canada, Germany, we have a lot of them. So the workers report on board behavior. Workers report on board behavior. This workers report was carried out by David Walker, and the essence of this is that to look at all the various method of governance, control, monitoring, and supervision in all listed companies, including private and public. That was the research that David Walker carried out. And after carrying out this, he came out with all these reports as findings. What are the reports? The Walker report included the following comments about the contribution of poor corporate governance. So, what are the findings? And what are these things that he called poor corporate governance that he discovered in the course of the research? One, there is serious deficiency in prudential oversight and financial regulations. So there is no stricter financial regulations. And in some companies too, they have a very weak internal financial control, and which give the opportunity for the board of directors, the chairman, the CEO, whatever, to manipulate. the assets of the company. So we take that again. He said he find out that there is a serious deficiency in prudential oversight and financial regulation in the period before the crisis, where the crisis were accompanied by major governance failures within banks. And we can see in Nigeria too, in some instances, the CBNs are quiet about it because we have a lot of inedible banks. We have a lot of banks that cannot even meet the recapitalization policy. A lot of banks are showing the symptoms and signs of distress now. We have some that have collapsed in the past. The sudden merger of Diamond Bank with Access Bank is a result of these issues too. And you can see that time that Diamond Bank have the highest non-performing loans. There's a lot of matured loans that are not paid, a lot of toxic assets. So we have a lot of failing bank and many more too in Nigeria. The same thing with corporate organization. But anytime they are publishing their financial report, they give us a misleading and falsified financial report, which the investors, the shareholders will relent on. And before you know it, suddenly the company will collapse because the company is illiquid. So the workers' report equally discovered that the deficiency in the corporate oversight and poor financial regulation contributed materially to excessive risk taking. Yes, it's contribute to excessive risk taking. They discover in some companies, the chairman of the board, they are weak. In some companies, being researched on, look at number 4, the composition and dynamism of the board is inadequate. And that one is even illegal because the law states what should be the composition of the board. You must have a balanced board. You must have a diversified board. The number of dependent and independent executive, NED, has been stated. But yet some companies fail to comply with this. Okay, what are the main issues of corporate governance? Main issues that corporate governance focus on. The main areas covered by Code of Corporate Governance are: the corporate governance covers 1, the roles and responsibility of the board of directors. And by that, in principle and in law, we are required to clearly state, and not just stating, let the appointed directors understand all their roles and responsibility. So the board of the directors should have a clear understanding of its responsibility and should fulfill this responsibility with good leadership and transparency and shareholders engagement. That's the first rule. 2, corporate governance focus on the composition and the balance of the board. Yes, you must have chairman, deputy chairman in some instances, executive director, non-executive director, independent executive directors, and many more. Board committee. These are the what we need as composition. But when we are talking of balance of the board of directors, yes, there should be balance in the board of directors. And we have to ensure that we balance the power too. Power should not be concentrated in the hands of individual or group of individuals. It will cause crisis for the company. So corporate governance equally focus on financial reporting, narrative reporting, and auditing. And this one should be done with transparency and probity. It should not be doctored, it should not be falsified, it should not be misleading. And even the financial reporting should meet standard financial reporting that are being used by all companies. Again, corporate governance focus and discuss comprehensively on directors' remuneration. And it does not only discuss on directors' remuneration, it advises all shareholders to make the directors' remuneration to be appealing, to be juicy, because a lot of work they do, because a lot of risks they do. So we have to ensure that the directors are well paid, and their remuneration salary should be attached with performance-related benefits. So this one will make them to be more committed and reduce fraudulent practices or intention. So in the director's remuneration, you can see directors work for a reward. So to encourage their commitment to achieving the objective of the company, they should be given suitable incentives. And apart from the incentive, you should link their remuneration to performance-related benefits and targets. So corporate governance equally focus on risk management and internal control. So here companies are expected to uh, design and let all the board of directors and investors know their risk appetite. Risk appetite means the limit of risks or losses that we can take on any financial investment. You must have the ability to identify risks, ability to manage risks, ability to control it, which is a risk that we can control. We should be able to use ALAP as low as reasonable possible. So that should be risk management and internal control in the organization. So it is called on the shareholders' right. Shareholders' right. In the shareholders' right, the directors, we have told you, we must protect the investment of the shareholders. You must ensure equity in giving them dividends. They must be engaged in all strategic decisions in the company. And at the same time, we must manage their investments very well, maximize their profits, accumulate their wealth, and give priority to their interests. Corporate governance equally discuss and encourage companies to be socially responsible and exhibit what we call ethical behavior to the entire public society. In the CSR, CSR is a voluntary obligation that is being carried out by companies with the aim of being practically involved in solving societal problems. And the whole of the CSR objective is for companies to ensure that part of the profit they realize, utilize it to fulfill their own social contracts. So what I mean by social contract is that there's a social contract between uh, a corporate entity, company, and the society or community that hosts them. Because it is this society that give you access to land, labor, resources, and many more. So they have fulfilled their own part. So companies too must compensate and say thank you for hosting us. Companies too must complement the efforts of the government through CSR. And this our CSR is multidimensional. So there is no limit to the areas where we can direct our CSR. It can be in agricultural development, sport development, small and medium scale enterprises, women entrepreneurship development. You can see the yearly marathon of Access Bank. That one is directed towards sport development. It can be on medical support and healthcare support. So with this CSR, it assists organizations to boost their corporate image. Their goodwill will increase. A company that is doing CSR, they have to, it will give them opportunity to establish a mutually benefiting and reciprocal relationship with the society, the government, and it will attract a lot of new investors. So there is a lot we can talk about CSR, and with that CSR too, it will ensure compliance and positive social footprints to environmental sustainability goals of the company and the government at large. So the Enron that we discussed, the reason why Enron, WorldCom, and some other global leading company collapse are this. So the reasons are false accounting, and it's not limited to Enron. In Nigeria too, we have a lot of complaints like that. You can see the issue of mobile about 2 or 3 years ago. I think it's more than that now, maybe getting close to 3 to 4 years now. False accounting. So the audit committee too, there is a collusion within the internal and external audit committee. So they give misleading annual financial statements. Subordination of interest, deficiency in supervision control. These are some of the things that make a company to collapse. And that was what happened during the Enron period. So having looked at that, we quickly look at the code of governance for voluntary and community sectors. Code of governance for voluntary and community sectors. And this one is not even limited to voluntary and community sectors. It covers both private, our own personal business, and that of the organization where we are working for. So what are the code of a good corporate governance? So one, board leadership. So in the board leadership, every organization should be led and controlled by effective board of trustees. So for voluntary and community sector, those people that will be appointed into the board, they must be those people that have the experience, commitment, knowledge, sound educational background, and we can even have a diversified ethnics and many more. So that when we have these people, collectively, they will ensure delivery of its objective. Apart from delivery of the objective of the company, they will set a strategic direction. That means they will create a pathway for achievement of all these goals and objectives. And above all, uphold the values of the company. Because we must not bring on board those people that will not share the values of the company, the philosophy of the company, the vision and mission of the company. We must bring on board those people that will value it. So the second principle is the board in control. Board in control. So by that board in control, the trustee as a board should collectively be responsible for and accountable for ensuring monitoring. So by that board in control, the board should be on top of all situations. But since they have been appointed there, they have become part of the strategic capers that Henry Misbach talks about. And their responsibility is for them to ensure proper monitoring, supervision, and they'll be held accountable for this. The third principle is the board should be high.
Sir,
Hello, I'm with you.
good morning, sir.
Good morning, Madam Ifoma.
Sir, in case of corporate governance, who are trustees?
When you follow us, you will discover that the caption of this principle that we are looking at is governance for voluntary and community sector. You know, in an organization, which is a corporate entity now, in the board of, we call them board of directors, that comprise of executive and non-executive. This board of directors can now constitute a lot of committees All these committees, remuneration committee, financial committee, and many more. But for voluntary, look at the caption of what we are looking at. Voluntary and community sectors, just like the NGOs and many more too, they use that word trustees. Is it understood, ma'am?
So in a case, if the board turn out to form something like a cooperative, could that also be seen as trustees?
Yes, now. And we have empowered them, we have trusted them to be at the end of affair of the complaint. And they must repair to the chairman of the board or that trustee or committee.
All right, so thank you.
Okay, ma, you're welcome, ma. So we have board review as number 4 principles. Board review and renewal. By that board review and renewal, it means that the board should periodically review its own and the organization effectively. So periodically, the board should review their activities. So this one will help them to know the areas of deficiency, weaknesses, gray area, the areas of strength that can leverage on to achieve further goals. So timely, board should review all their activities. All the committees and trustees should come together. And number 5 talks about delegation. We all know that delegation is very key. So in that delegation, the board should set out the function of subcommittees, officers, the chief executive, and other staff. So by the time we delegate, we all work towards collective goals and achievement of the broad objective of the company. So with delegation now, it gives a lot of empowerment. It's equally a tool that we use in training our staff and achieve both short, medium, and long-term goals. And delegation brings about good interpersonal relationship and enhance the confidence level of the staff and board member. Number 6 principle, the board and trustee integrity. You must act with probity, integrity, and there shouldn't be any form of conflicting interest. Lastly, 7 principle, that one talks about transparency and openness. So these should be a guiding principles that all companies, board of directors, trustees, committees, including you and I, must embrace. So before we go to the concept of corporate governance and the syllabus required that we should look at, so I put here the governance standard for public services. Governance standard for public services. For all public services, appointed directors, committee, and the rest, what are the governance standard? 1, focusing on the organization purpose and outcomes for citizens and service users. That should be governance standard. You must focus on the purpose of the organization, be it parastatals, MDAs, and what have you, and the outcome, the achievement of results, how it will benefit the citizens and the service users. 2, we have to ensure performing effectively in clearly defined functions and roles. These are some of the things that some of our ministers, I don't want to start mentioning it, are doing. Majority of them, they are power intoxicated because they romance at the corridor of power. They now put power in their hands. They derive from the constitutional provisions. So as a result of that, we have to ensure that We refrain from that. We perform effectively in clearly defined functions and roles. Shut down, shut down. 3, we must promote values for the whole organization and demonstrate the value of good governance through behavior. We must exhibit and reinforce positive behaviors and attitudes. We must use two-way communication, open policy. We should be a team builder, a democratic leader. Another principle is we have to take another principle is that we have to take informed transparent decisions and manage risks. A lot of companies collapse today. A lot of companies are in a state of distress. A lot of companies that are progressing before, they are now experiencing retrogressing performance, all because the board failed to take informed, there's lack of transparency in decision making, and above all, poor risk management policy. So all these principles, we have to ensure that we abide by it. So the examiner states categorically in the new syllabus review that the concept and features of good corporate governance must be known by all students, the examiners, and the rest. So what are the concepts of good corporate governance? There are things that we know. We have to read this concept very well. I think we have about 5 or 6 here. Even some of my students, they give it a code so that for them not to forget, they bring the leading alphabet like F, O, I, H. They use it to form a code that they can easily recall anytime they ask them a concept of good corporate governance. Which we can do is we can emulate good things. Even I do tell you that part of the strategy that company use is imitation of competitor strategy. You can copy your competitor strategy. So the concept and features of a good corporate governance. So the concept are one, fairness. Fairness. By that fairness, to me that in corporate governance, fairness refers to the principle that all shareholders should receive fair treatment from the directors. And it's not limited to shareholders, including all stakeholders. They must receive fairness in all ramifications. Fairness. So at a basic level, it means that all the equity shareholders in a company should be entitled to equal treatment. Yes, equal treatment, voting rights. When you are sharing dividends too, it should be shared with transparency and fairness. 2, another feature is openness and transparency. So openness means not hiding anything. The intention should be clear and information should not be withheld from the individuals and directors, including all the investors. And we mentioned not quite long that any areas of vested interest of the directors should be opened up. So this one we give proper consideration. Independence too is another basic characteristics or features of governance. Independence means freedom from influence of someone else. And all the shareholders are trying. The moment the directors have been appointed, they give them opportunity to make independence, personal judgment and decision. And that decision must be the one that will benefit the company. It should not be a decision that is made for the personal gains of the directors. No. Honesty and integrity is another features. So the director should be honest It must act with integrity. It must exhibit good moral and ethical behavior. Responsibility and accountability. Responsibility and accountability. So the director of a company are given most of the power for running the company. So many of these powers are delegated to executive managers. Yes. But the directors what? Remain responsible for the way in which those powers are used. That means when you delegate responsibility, you have to ensure that you supervise, see that it is properly done in accordance with the requirements. So you cannot just delegate responsibility and not review what the person that you delegate to have done, because it is you director that be accountable. And even in law, the law says that he who acts by another acts by himself. So reputation too, that is one key thing. The director must have a good reputation. Apart from having a good reputation, you must protect the goodwill, the reputation of the company too. You must not engage in any illegal transactions that can drag the image of the company into disrepute or tarnish the reputation of the company that they have built over years. Because the reputation of the company is an asset of the company, and it attracts a lot of suppliers, investors, and many more. So having a look at that, we have something similar to all those characteristics or attributes of good governance, and that's what we call Nolan's 7 principles of public life. Nolan's 7 principles of public life. These 7 principles was established and published in United Kingdom, and the Nolan's principle says that all committees, trustees in the public life, most of the time these people working with government and the rest, they have to ensure that these principles are abide with. If you have the principles, you have been using it, adhere to it. If you are deficient in this, you have to know that these principles are things that you must use and exercise at all time. One, the first principle is selflessness. Selflessness. You should not put your interest first in anything that you are doing. Rather, the interest of the public and the government supersede all interests and personal interests. Integrity, we have mentioned these two. So, under integrity, you must not involve yourself or perpetrate any fraud. You should have code of secrecy and many more. So, objectivity, you must act with objectivity. Avoid diverting contracts, overinflation of contracts, and any related vice habits. Accountable too, you have to be accountable and make yourself available for public scrutiny, because by the time you engage in all this fraudulent part, a whistleblower shows. You might be called upon by independent corrupt practices come ICPC, EFCC can come in. It can affect reputation, can lead to loss of job. It can attract stricter punishment, can lead to going to jail. So we have to be accountable, and there should be openness, honesty, and leadership. So those are the Nolan principles. So let's proceed, because we have some other topics behind. Agency theory. So this agency theory, we have to summarize it. So what we mean by agency theory, and the reason why agency theory is mentioned in the syllabus, is that the relationship between the owners of the business that are regarded as shareholders and the appointed director is an agency relationship. It is an agency relationship because The shareholders are the principals that owns the business, while the directors, non-executive directors, the independent non-executive directors, they are the agents that are employed and empowered to manage and govern the company. That is just about the agency uh, relationship. And in this agency relationship, we are not expected, please, if your background is law, for those people that we have legal numerary in the system, you are not expected to now be talking about types of agency. There are agency of estoppel, ratification, agency of necessity, agency of deserted wife, and many more. No, you have to limit yourself to the provision of the syllabus. So under this one, the solution of agency relationship by operation of no, it's not under this. It's not that business law agency, please. Okay. So what are the fiduciary duty of directors? The agents of the company, directors, can you see now? The agents of the company are directors of the company, have a fiduciary duty to the company. And what is that fiduciary duty? The fiduciary duty is a duty of trust. Duty of trust. All because a director must act on behalf of the company in total good faith. So we call it utmost good faith. I must not put his personal interest above that of the shareholders. So part of the fiduciary duty of the director is that the director must not violate or breach this fiduciary duty. Because if you breach it, the owners can bring an action in court against you. They take a legal step. That one has been taken care of. I put it as part of the note. I think it's in the second paragraph too. That if a director, yes, is here. If a director is in breach of this fiduciary duty, it could be held liable in law. So we can take a litigation against the director. So we have to place note this. So the directors, when you breach your fiduciary duty, legal action can be taken against you. And apart from the legal action, the chairman can vote to remove any director from the office. And this one will require all the shareholders to come to form a meeting. It might be during AGM meeting, annual general meeting, or EGM, extraordinary general meeting. Because we need the majority shareholders vote to remove the director. So they can remove you by taking legal action or by voting rights. Okay. So what are the agency conflicts? What are the things that bring agency conflicts? Because you can see this aspect that I move here. This area talks about what and what are part of the clash of interest between the shareholders and the directors. So let's look together. We have each of this group. When you see each of this group here, each of this group that I mean is that both the shareholders and the directors. So that means each of this group, that is, the shareholders and directors, have different interests and objectives. What are the interests of the shareholders and the directors? Why is it different? One, it is different because of this. Look at this. One, the shareholders want to increase their income and wealth. Yes, of course. So their interest is with the returns that the company will provide in the form of dividends and also in the value of their shares. That's the priority of the shareholders. But now look at the priority of the directors or manager. The managers are employed to run the company on behalf of the shareholders. However, if the manager do not own shares in the company, they have no direct interest in future returns for the shareholders. So as a result of that, their own priority will now be how they can increase the income of the company so that their salary can increase. They can have some personal benefit. So there is always a conflicting interest between the shareholders and the directors. In fact, in some areas when we have huge financial investment, majority of the shareholders, they have what we call risk averse. They don't like investing more on businesses that attract higher risks. But majority of the directors, they have risk appetite. They like to invest on businesses that attract higher risks. It's a conflicting interest. So this one brings about a lot of conflicts between the shareholders and the directors. So what are these agency conflicts? Let's quickly look at it. Agency conflicts. So the agency conflict that we are seeing, agency conflicts are differences in the interest of a company owner, that is shareholders, and the managers or directors. So the agency conflict arises in the following ways. One, moral hazard. Moral hazard. What do we call moral hazard? Moral hazard occur when the manager has an interest in receiving benefits from his or her position as a manager. You want to use your position as a director or manager to perpetrate some personal benefit or gains or reward from investors, suppliers, and many more. And even the moral hazard, we have some directors that will be victimizing, mounting pressure on the directors to change their cars. They even want yearly instead of this normal one that is 3 years or 2 years in some companies. So part of this moral hazard, see, this includes all the benefits that come from status, such as a company car, a private chauffeur, use of company airplane, launchings, attending sponsors events. So some directors, they have the quest for this, not minding the returns of the company, not thinking of how the company can plow back their profit to increase their portfolio of investments. Secondly, effort level. This one causes crisis too. So what do we mean by effort level? Effort level means that the manager may work less hard than they would if they were the owners of the company. Can you see the gravity of that statement? That some of the directors and the managers, they intentionally work less. But I mean it is their own personal business. Their level of commitment, productivity, efficiency, and proficiency will increase. So let's go further. Under the effort level, the interest of the middle managers and the interest of the senior manager might be different, especially if the senior manager are given pay incentives to achieve higher profits, and whereas the middle managers are not given. So that is one reason why we are saying there should be equity and justice, unbiased appraisal, unbiased reward, because the perceived disparity in remuneration and performance related benefits can make the workers, be it manager, directors, or whatever, functional managers, supervisors, strategic business unit manager, to intentionally reduce the level of commitment and efficiency. So apart from that, another thing I call as a risk aversion, I've mentioned that risk aversion. Executive directors and senior managers usually earn more of their income from the company they work for. So they are therefore interested in the stability of the company because this will protect their job and their future income. Yes, because when the company is experiencing internal instability or disequilibrium, it threatens their job. So we go further. This means that management might be risk averse. They might be risk averse. They are very cautious in risk management, risk certification, risk control. They are very cautious in using ALAP, ALARP, as low as reasonable profitable. So they have risk averse, skeptical about investing in a high risk business, and reluctant to invest in a high risk project. But in contrast, shareholders might want a company to take bigger risks. That our company, part of our culture is that we have appetite for risks. So this one will be conflict between them. So another thing that causes crisis, conflict, agency conflict between the shareholders and the board is time horizon. Shareholders are concerned about the long-term financial prospects of their company, whereas we see in some instances whereby the directors will be curious about short-term benefits and interest. So these are some of the areas of conflicting interest that I want us to address and which we have done. So what do you mean by agency cost? In case we are being asked that what is agency cost? Agency cost. Agency cost means all the total amount of money that the shareholders, the owners of the company, spend in ensuring proper governance, monitoring, supervision, and preventing fraudulent practices or deficiency in the corporate oversight. So all the money they spend to ensure that all operational activities, everything go on smoothly, and to ensure that all the directors do not breach their trust and put their interests first. So that money that we spend is what we call agency costs. So what are these agency costs? Say one, cost of monitoring. So under the cost of monitoring, the owners, shareholders of a company can establish system for monitoring the action and performance of the management. And this one requires a lot of money. And if this thing is not done, the directors can run the company in a way that is not good in the interest of the shareholders. And it can affect the going concern of the company. That is the reason why they spend money on this. So another agency cost is residual loss or losses. So the residual losses, what does it mean? Agency costs also include the cost to the shareholders that arise when the manager takes decisions that are not in the best interest of the shareholders. For instance, we can have an example of that. Agency costs arise when a company director decides to acquire a new subsidiary and pay more for the acquisition than it is worth. That is overinflation of acquisition, overinflation of award of a contract because of the personal gain that the directors want to have. Another one that we call agency cost is bonding cost. The bonding cost means all the total amount of money that the shareholders spend in ensuring that they make provision for performance-related benefits, financial and non-financial incentives, and to retain a performing directors. All these special cards that we give them, housing and many more, those are the things that we call bonding costs. So how can we reduce the agency problems in an organization? So some of the approaches that we can use or strategy to reduce agency problem are this. One, devising the remuneration package for executive directors and senior managers. We have to compare what other companies are paying them. We have to use international remuneration standard if the company can avoid it. So when you give them a devised and standard remuneration package, this one will limit their misappropriation. It will limit their quest for more profit. and it will increase their level of commitment. But by the time we give them a good remuneration and their performance benefit and incentives, then automatically the perceived organizational trust will increase. 2, the use of whistleblower. Use of whistleblowers. We must have whistleblowers internally within the company that give us information about the activities of all these board of directors. And we must act on the information provided by the whistleblower and ensure that we protect their life and identity. So another thing that we can do is use of retirement by rotation. Retirement by rotation. Retirement by rotation. So what we call in retirement by rotation is that when we are appointing the director, instead of giving them 5 years tenure, we can decide to give them 3 years tenure. And in the letter of appointment that will be given to the directors, it will be stated there that the appointment to this particular position is meant to be 5 years. But this our company use retirement by rotation policy, so that by 3 years your tenure will end temporarily, subject to reapproval by the board of directors and the shareholders. So that means by the 3rd year, the director will step aside and allow his or her performance to be reviewed. If the performance is up to expectation or surpass expectations, and considering other positive factors, they can extend the directorship tenure. But if the director performs low expectation, short director will not be reappointed. That's what we call retirement by rotation. It helps in reducing agency problem, litigation problems. And since the directors knew that their performance will be subject to review, all of them, they used to perform very well. So the next things that we are looking at is the theories of corporate governance. Theories of corporate governance. Please don't joke with this. It comes out regularly in exam. It comes out regularly in exam. And the theories of corporate governance that the syllabus require that we should cover. So they are here. The first one is transaction cost theory. If you want to call it transactional cost theory, it's still the same thing. That's the first theory of corporate governance. Transaction cost theory or transactional cost theory. So the transaction cost theory, what does it mean? So let me take one or two lines together so that I now summarize it. The transaction cost theory attempts to explain companies not just as economic units. That is remarkable. He said, transaction cost theory attempts to explain company not just as economic units, but as organizations consisting of people with different views and objectives. The company must not just put priority to profit making, maximization of profit, maximization of wealth. Agree that we have to protect the interests of the shareholders. You must have a balanced composition of board. You must have a diversified board. And we must ensure that the board of directors and all of our staff, they are so acquainted with knowledge. We empower them so that they can be able to have different views and perception over issues. They can be able to make significant positive contributions to achievement of goals. And all these our staff too, they must be empowered. They must be trained. So the transaction theory says that company need a management structure and a hierarchy of authority. And in that hierarchy of authority, senior management must be at the top of this hierarchy. So the transactional theory is telling us that a company must have a good structure, because without the structure, nothing can be achieved. So by that good structure, we must have various departments, various units, organizational charts, communication networking, and we must have hierarchy of authority. Maybe the directors, the functional manager, supervisors, lower level manager. Let's have a reporting style that when we do this, then automatically the company will do very well. So apart from that, this transactional cost is very, very essential. Look at this. The transaction cost economics changes these assumptions by trying to allow for the human behavior and the fact that individuals do not always act rationally. The meaning of that is simple, and this is the meaning that you are saying next to it. Transaction cost theory is based on two assumptions and behavior. What are the assumptions and behavior or transaction cost theory? The first one is bounded rationality. By that bounded rationality, it means that humans, directors, managers act rationally, but only within certain limits of understanding. So that means that since human beings have limits, it's only God that have knowledge in everything. So the implication of that is that all other managers, shareholders, all other workers, subordinates, support staff, they must support and work collectively with all the directors so that they can achieve a collective goals because of that bounded rationality. The bounded rationality means that all human beings have a limit to thinking. All human beings have a limit to performance. So as a result of that, areas where the directors are weak, so let's leverage on this area to strengthen it and turn it to strength. So another assumptions of the transaction cost is opportunism, opportunistic behavior. He said if you don't use whistleblower, if you don't devise a mechanism to monitor the activities of the directors, if they are not well remunerated, they will exhibit opportunistic behavior. Even when you give them everything, all the apartments in the Aso Rock, the presidential private jet, give it to some directors. That does not mean that they will not act contrarily. Because opportunity means that individual act in a self-interest way. So, in other words, people will not always be honest and truthful about their intention, and will sometimes be opportunistic, opportunistic behavior. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. Madam is on leave. Let's quickly strike. So, what we call opportunism is an effort by the directors and staff of the company to realize individual gains through a lack of honesty in transaction. So that is what we call transactional cost. So transactional cost means that you must not just be focusing on economic gain, profit making. Develop your staff, ensure team unity, let them work together, identify the limits of the directors and some of your staff, train them. So let's complement the efforts and ensure synergy. And we have to know that there is what we call bounded rationality. There is a limit of what human being can do. All board of directors, even the owners of the business will have a limit. All these limits have to be identified. How can we improve on this limit? And we have to ensure that we curtail opportunistic behavior of some of our staffs. Second theory. The second theory is called stewardship theory. Second theory. Augusta, please, you can mute yourself, please. Augusta, Emishi, you can mute. So the second one is what we call stewardship theory. We all know the meaning of steward. Once you know the meaning of steward, then automatically you have known the meaning of stewardship. Stewardship theory means that in the stewardship theory of corporate governance, it is recognized that the directors of a company have a stewardship role because they look after the assets of the company and manage them on behalf of the shareholders. All directors, not only directors, all staff of a company as steward of that company. Because we have that steward role to act as agents of necessity. We have that steward role to discharge our responsibility effectively. So once you have been appointed by the principal who are the shareholders, you must ensure that you play steward role, manage the assets of the company, manage their business, manage their finances, and many more. See to good relationship with the customers, manage the reputation of the companies, and all portfolio of investments. That is stewardship role. The third theory is resource dependence theory. Resource dependence theory. So by the resource dependence theory, the basic argument of resource dependence theory can be summarized as follows. One, organization depend on resources such as material resources, human resources, that is labor, and capital resources. Two, resources are a basis of power to organization. Three, legally, independent organization may therefore depend on their organization for the resources they need. So what the resources dependence theory is saying is this, that the only way a company can gain sustainable survival, growth, enhanced performance, innovativeness, and competitive advantage is by utilizing effectively the internal resources of the company. Now, instead of the company to be looking at the best strategy to use, the best product to produce, he said no. The resource-based view says that effective use of the internal resources of the company give the company competitive advantage. So without using your limited resources very well, nothing can be achieved. So gaining competitive power, achieving return on capital employed, return on investment, increasing our market share, everything boils on ability of the company to use their resources effectively. Number 4, managerial economy theory and class economy theory. Managerial economy theory and class economy theory. So both managerial economy theory and class economy theory, they are simple things that we know, but don't mind the word economy. Don't allow it to create a confusion for us. So by class economy theory is a masses-based theory that consider the business elite as upper class, and that's just the meaning. Upper class, and as a group of individuals who control the governance of companies to perpetuate their power base. What this one means is that in the managerial economies means that all the managers, directors of a company, be it executive director, non-executive directors, independent executive directors, and all other functional managers, they have managerial economy. They have upper class. They occupy superior position. They have high status in the organization. And as a result of that, they use this one to influence decision making and attract some personal benefits to themselves. That's what we call managerial or class economy. So at the same time, when you look at this managerial economy, it says similar to class economy theory, in that the system of governance under the board of directors is seen as a tool of the management. Yes, because the management has empowered the director to manage the company. So all powers belong to them. Even some are even insinuating. See what they are insinuating. They said it argued that the real power in corporate governance lies with the management, and that the management can take the advantage of shareholders' weaknesses to pursue their self-interest. We have pleaded against this, that no matter the power that you are being empowered, the interest of the shareholders should supersede that of the directors. It's not a matter of being shareholders' weaknesses and the rest. I don't believe in that assertion, because you must trust and you must empower and give the fiduciary duties and responsibilities to your directors, and you must have a good relationship with them. So the directors too are expected to act in good faith, with probity, honesty, openness, with trust, accountability, and put the interests of the shareholders first. So we have another theory that we call psychological and organizational perspective theory. So the summary of this theory is that effective governance depends on informal structure and behavior within the organization. So that's what the psychological theory is saying, that when we have informal structure, good interpersonal relationship, good attitude and behavior by our staff, then it will be easier for the company to achieve their goals, because of the fact that the industrial harmony, peaceful coexistence within the organization, and lack of rigidity or bureaucratic procedures will make it easier for the company to achieve results, rather than putting in place a rigid policy. So the second one that we have as organizational perspective theory. This one is based on the view that the performance of the board of directors, the company ownership and remuneration, and other incentive for executives may differ according to the legal system and institutional characteristics in specific country. So this one is not telling you that we can make comparison of what other companies are paying, what other incentives they are giving their directors, because the directors must be well remunerated. To retain directors is very difficult, particularly the performing directors, proactive, result-oriented directors, go-getters, transformational directors. The only thing that we can use to retain them is to give them the remuneration that meets industry standard, to give them high incentives and all other performance-related benefits that other companies give them. Stakeholders theory, that's number 6. Stakeholders theory. Stakeholders theory. The stakeholders theory of corporate governance is that governance depends on the interrelationship and relative strength of the different stakeholders of a company. That does not substantiate further or enough. What the stakeholder theory is saying is that the board of directors, they should ensure that all interests of the stakeholders within and outside the companies are taken care of. Our internal stakeholders, our primary stakeholders, which comprises of the employees, the managers, the support staff, what have you, we must ensure they are better paid. We must ensure we give them motivational reward system. We must ensure that they have access to good medical facilities, insurance. That should be job safety. You must recognize their trade union, because that's the only forum through which they can request for their fundamental rights, legitimate rights in the company. So we must ensure that all our staff has access to leave. There's provision for loans and the rest. So the stakeholder theory is saying that the board of directors must see to staff development, capacity development, because the stakeholders are the assets of the company that assist us in achieving our lay down goals and objectives. So the last one is system governance. The system governance says that a company is regarded as a system. It is a system because it has a lot of interlinked subsystem. It has a lot of interlinked subsystem. We have regional office, we have branches, we have units within units, we have strategic business units, we have various departments, we operate virtual system, digital operations, and all these things must be harnessed together and network so that we can achieve superior goals and performance. That's what the system theory of corporate governance theory talks about. So having a look at that, so we are required to know the importance of information technology, IT, on corporate governance. Importance of information technology on corporate governance. So what are the importance of information technology on corporate governance? So we have to look at the functional scope of corporate governance first. What are the functional scope of corporate governance? The scope of a system of governance must incorporate all of the business functions and operations, such as, so that means corporate governance covers the finance and operations, marketing and sales, administrations, human resources management, information technology and system, very essential, risk system and internal control. Say strategy, strategic formulation, strategic implementation, strategic evaluation, strategic control, strategic alignment, everything. You must ensure that there is a proper governance on this. Compliance with laws and regulations. The lack of compliance attracts litigations and can damage or soil our reputation. Financial reporting is there, policy and procedure. These are the scopes of corporate governance. So, of what importance is information technology in governance?
Hello, sir.
Hello, I'm with you, sir.
Yes, sir. Please, I just want you to help us draw the line between administration and human resources. Is there any differences or similarity? Because in some
There is.
organizations, they do use it interchangeably. Some will differentiate it.
You are blessed. You are blessed. I love that. I love that. Kudos to you. And you have said it all. In some organization, we can say one, it depends on the size of the organization, the age of the organization. When you look at the greenhouse growth model that we treated, at the phase one of the greenhouse growth model, that diagram, we call it the phase of growth through creativity. And at that point, what was the crisis they have? They have crisis of leadership. So because of the small size and age of the company have limited staff that have not grown. Some they don't even have functional roles to all their staff. Some they don't have department or units. But by the time they are now moving to stage two, these are the stage of uh, direction, and stage three, stage of delegation. They now have more structures, departments, they acquire experience skills and what have you. They have strategic business unit manager, and so by that time they can have administrative sections or manager. So some departments, some companies, irrespective of size, would I call it because of strategic myopia or personally because of uh, the hidden intention to reduce overhead expenses? They don't want to have a separate human resources. So all the functions will be done by the admin manager. Procurement, admin manager. Human resources, admin manager. Maintenance, logistics and distribution and transportation, admin manager. Research and development, admin manager. It's not good for business. We just talk about it under the transactional cost. What do we conclude? that there is a bounded rationality. That means that guy cannot do everything. It can't be even be effective. And it's not his area of specialization. It might be somebody that read business admin. That does not confine you to become a satisfied accountant. A knowledge in business admin does not give you opportunity to know everything in the areas of procurement. So the best thing that we should do in a formalized company that have a good structure in place, they have separate departments that are saddled with the responsibility of recruitment, outsourcing, manpower planning, they get it, and all other related functions. Determination of the staff salary, promotion. These are the duties and responsibility of human resources department, human resources management. Is that understood? So while the administrative functions will be performed by the admin managers. So most companies now, they differentiate between the two. We go to banking industry, insurance industry, any industry that you see, they are two different things. Is that taken, sir?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You're welcome, sir. So what are the main areas of IT in governance? So the main areas of IT is that the main areas of IT in the director's duties are the following. One, ensuring adequate information technology and system. So you must ensure as director, and that's one beauty that I appreciate in this Tinubu regime. You get it, in that we have, I think, will I say just one that I've seen that is a technocrat, very, very sound, the Minister of Interior Decoration. So that guy have used IT to revolutionize the portfolio and all the agency or MDAs that is controlling. So unlike before that, 3, 6 months, 8 months, 5 months, whatever, you apply for just passports, you will be unable to have it. So these are things that you can do seamlessly online now. So as a director, you must ensure integration and adequate information technology system in all the operational activities of the company. 2, ensuring adequate funding is key. Look at the definition of strategy. It says strategy is the determination of the basic long-term goals to be achieved by the company and allocation of resources necessary to achieve the goals. If there is no allocation of necessary funds, then automatically nothing will be done. So the board of directors must approve. They have to ensure adequate funding is available to support the IT capability because it is money consuming. It is capital intensive. So again, you must have a robust system of internal control. So the essence of that robust system, we have to put it in place to prevent what? To prevent and detect errors, cyber crimes. At the same time, we must ensure IT assets and data are safeguarded, because if we don't safeguard our data, hackers are there. So they penetrate the wall of most companies for their own dubious gains. So the specific aspects of IT to governance include personal data protection. You have to put data in place, IT, for personal data protection of the company. Cyber risks and control over IT. So I love the pace at which we move today. So next is to look at the different approaches to corporate governance. In the different approaches to corporate governance, we have 2 approaches to corporate governance. We have 1, rule-based approach, and 2, principle-based approach. And these approaches to corporate governance are put in place to reduce the crisis of corporate governance oversight, to minimize bad corporate governance. to prevent sudden collapse of companies, to reduce business risks, and to checkmate the excesses of the directors. These are part of the reasons why the approaches are put in place. So we look at the different approaches to corporate governance. Like I said, there are basically two major approaches to corporate governance. Namely, we have one, rule-based approach. Since you see rule, that means the rule-based approach comprises of laws and regulations that guide all listed companies. So we have two types of corporate governance approaches, the rule-based approach, and the second one is principle-based approach. So before we look at it, let me summarize this thing. Let me summarize this to you. You see, the rule-based approach, it comprises of laid down laws, regulations that all listed companies, irrespective of their size, must abide with for us to have effective corporate governance oversight. And anybody that violated the law will face the wrath of law. They will take it to court. But under the principle base, that one comprises of principles, laid down principles that the company directors must abide with and comply without any violation. And if at all there is a violation in some aspect, you have to justify the reason why you have violated it. But the principle-based approach is being controlled, managed by the shareholder. That's just the two difference between the two. The major difference. Okay, let's look at it. The rule-based approach to corporate governance. A rule-based approach to corporate governance is based on the view that companies must be required by law to comply with established principle of good corporate governance. So, the rules might apply only to some types of company, such as a major stock market company. That means the rule base is binding on all listed companies. Those companies that their shares are traded on the stock exchange. And most of these rule-based approach too, they are being developed and managed by Security Exchange Commissions and some agency. We have CBN and the rest. So this rule, please, must be abide with rigidly, total compliance. So there is zero tolerance for non-compliance with the rule base. Any company that violated this, any director that violated this, then it will face litigation in recognized court. So what are the advantages of the rule base? Some of the advantages of the rule base is this. Companies do not have the choice of ignoring the rules, meaning that it gives us a uniform laws that guide corporate governance. Two, another benefit of the rule base is that all companies are required to meet the same minimum standard of corporate governance, the same benchmark, uniformity in the standard for corporate governance control and monitoring. Three, investors' confidence in the stock market might be improved since they know that there are rules guiding it. And these stringent rules, they are well implemented, monitored. So automatically, it will boost investors' confidence. It will even attract potential investors to invest their money because they know that there are rules guiding that sector. And all operating companies must comply with those rules. So it gives them more confidence. So what are the disadvantages of the rule-based approach? Some of the disadvantages and the criticism leveled against it is that it is rigid and it doesn't consider the size and structure of the company. There are some companies that are small. They are okay. Let's look at it. The disadvantages of the rule-based approach. One, the same rules might not be suitable for every company. because the circumstances of each complaint are different. That talks about rigidity. Say the same rule may not be suitable for every complaint because the circumstances of each complaint are different. Two, another disadvantage is that a system of corporate governance is too rigid if the same rules are applied to all complaints. We have number three. There are some aspects of the corporate governance that cannot be regulated easily by law, such as negotiating the remuneration of directors. Two, deciding the most suitable range of skills. Yes, I reason with that too. But when it's come to the principle-based approach, principle-based approach, this is the principle-based approach. So the principle-based approach comprises of some principles that are recognized by a regulatory agency, the government, and this principle serve as alternative to the rule-based approach. You see, this principle, the essence of this principle is that the principle are put in place to provide a sort of flexibility and melody of relief to directors and companies owners. But the principles are not put in place to replace the rule-based approach. No. So, a principle-based approach to corporate governance is an alternative to rule-based approach. It is based on the view that a single set of rules is inappropriate to every complaint. But that is the complaint about the rule-based approach, that it is based on the view that a single set of rules, they are talking of the rule-based approach now, is inappropriate for every complaint because circumstances and situation differs between complaints. So the circumstances of the same complaint can change over time. This means that the most suitable corporate governance practices can differ between complaints, and it's true. And that's the reason why they are saying that the rule-based approach is too rigid, too complex, and is not considerate. So the argument under the principle-based approach, another argument is that it is therefore argued that a corporate governance code should be applied to all major complaints, but this code should consist of principles and not rules. And that principles too, to ensure compliance and good governance, the principle should be applied by all complaints. So apart from applying the principles, going forward, there should be guidelines or provisions that will be issues with the code to suggest how the principles should be applied in practice. So as a general rule, please note, companies should be expected to comply with the guidelines or provisions in the principles. So all these principles, despite the fact that they are not, doesn't comprises of laws, the principles must be abide with all directors running the affairs of the company. There should not be any violation of any part of these principles, any part, section or subsections. But in case there is a violation, you must justify the reason why you have violated the principles. And that's the reason why the principle-based approach is so beautiful in that it gives us opportunity for comply or explain. But we don't have that opportunity in the rule-based approach. But yeah, let's look at the meaning of that. See, when a company does not comply with the guidelines or provisions of the code, it should report this fact to the shareholders. So under the principle-based approach, it is the shareholder that presides over the issue and not the court. They don't take the matter to court. So we take that again. That when a company does not comply with the guidelines or provision of a code, it should report this fact to the shareholders and explain its reasons for non-compliance. And that is what we call comply or explain. Very popular in UK. And I know some companies are using it here too. So what do we mean by comply or explain? Comply or explain. This approach is sometimes called comply or explain. It applies in the UK, even in Nigeria. For example, with a comply or explain approach, stock market companies are required to present a corporate governance statement to their shareholders in which they state that comply with all provisions or guidelines in the code for applying the principles in practice. 2, explain their non-compliance with any specific provision. So we are human beings. At times, some directors take some rational emergent decisions. Though no matter how emergent the decision, they have to carry the shareholders along. If it is majority shareholder, whatever, they should engage them, keep them abreast of the development and the urgency of the situation. Not that you will first of all commit a blunder, take a decision that was not communicated or is not in the best interest of the company, or decision that violate the principles. So later you are now informing them. When that kind of thing occur, then the directors or all the affected directors will have to face panel with the shareholders. They have to explain the reason why they violate and fail to comply with the principles. Maybe the section of a principle, subsections, or part of the principles. If their excuses are genuine, they can ratify it and warn them against reoccurrence of that. But if they don't have genuine excuses, they can fire them. They can receive query, they can be suspended or removed through voting rights. So the principle-based approach gives us a lot of flexibility and remove the rigidity that was attached to the rule-based approach. And the principle-based approach is being controlled by the shareholders, while the rule-based approach, the matter is taken to court. And please take note, when we say which one is more effective, a rule-based approach or principle-based approach, up to now, scholars have not come out that this is the best approach. The two of them are important, the two of them are relevant. We can use the two together in our company. So the advantages and disadvantages of the principle-based approach to corporate governance are the opposite of those for a rule-based approach. So I've helped you here. There is no conclusive evidence to suggest that one approach is better than the other. So what are the reasons for the development of corporate governance code? Reasons for the development of corporate governance code. So we have so many reasons here. The main reasons for code of corporate governance is to help and protect investors. To help and protect investors so that their business will not collapse. So another reason is that the financial reporting by companies and external auditing should therefore be reliable so that we can be able to have a reliable financial reporting and that measure of a standard local and international reporting style. And it will give all the investors opportunity to be adequately engaged and informed. Investors need reliable information about their companies so that to decide whether to invest in shares or to sell them. So if there are no rules or principles guiding all these directors, they will abuse the power given to them. Again, another reasons for the rules and code of corporate governance is that investors need to be protected against unethical or dishonest behavior by the company management and directors. For example, there must be strict laws against insider dealings to prevent managers from making personal profits at the expense of their investors. So, another reason why there is code of corporate governance, the rule-based and principle-based and the rest, is because of the pressure for better corporate governance due to the collapse of Enron, WorldCom, some banks in Nigeria too. You can see that the CBN too is ensuring that there is compliance to regulations. So we now have international code and principle of corporate governance. So the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, this one covers similar areas to other national and international governance code. So the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance deal with issues such as the role of the board of directors, what are their expected roles, the structure. Majorly, we have two board structure. We have the single structure and we have the dual structure. In the single structure, we have the executive director and non-executive director. They work together for monitoring, supervision, and the rest. Their functions are not segregated. But under the dual structure, we have management structure and supervisory structure. So Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance discuss on this too, and the composition of the board. That the composition of the board, we should have a balanced composition of the board. Diversity of people with different knowledge, education, ethnics, religion, and many more experience. So the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance discuss on the remuneration of the directors, performance evaluation of the directors, business conduct and ethics, and all the concepts, including risk management. So in the international corporate governance, too, we have them. Apart from the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, we have the International Corporate Governance Networking. We have the corporate governance in the Commonwealth. So all these international bodies too, they spell out corporate governance rules and principles, laws that should govern the directors' activities for better results. And the objective of this international law is that they said their major objective and priority is that when there is better governance, that better governance will attract more investment from global investors. It's not even from global, even within, locally within Nigeria. When there is transparency and better governance, it will attract more investors. Another objective is that companies will benefit from more investment finance to increase their profits. Yes. And thirdly, national economy will benefit from having a strong and profitable companies. It will bring about socioeconomic development and contribution to gross domestic product of the nation. So those are the objectives. It's the same objective that we have here. The objective of international corporate governance principle. So we have the same objective that we have spelled out now. So I just give you more so that when you are reading the material, you'll be able to see more objective there. And you can see another objective, we have mentioned this too, that they believe that this process enable economies to prosper and companies to be more effective in their competitions. So all these things that we have spelled it out. So what are the principles? The principles of international corporate governance body. So what are the principles of international corporate governance body? So the principles are these. Same with Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, another principle across the globe. So the principle says ensuring the basis for effective corporate governance framework. So that means that for you to have a good and sound corporate governance, and for you to limit your agency costs, then effective corporate governance requires a sound legal system, regulatory and international framework that market participants can rely on. So, in summary, that first principle says that the corporate governance framework should comprises of elements of legislation. You can't do anything without having a legal body or seeking for the legal clarification or implication. Elements of legislation, regulation, self-regulation arrangement, voluntary commitments, and many more. That's the first principle. The second principle says that the right and equitable treatment of shareholders and key ownership functions. We have emphasized and re-emphasized on this, that we said that there should be equity. That's what we call equity. Equity and fair treatment to all the shareholders and stakeholders, including all other investors. The third principle says that institutional investors, stock markets, and other intermediaries, they must all contribute to good corporate governance. You must have an investment climate or environment that is free from corruption. Principle 4. Principle 4. The role of stakeholders in corporate governance. This one stress the role of stakeholders should be properly spelled out. The corporate governance framework should recognize the right of the stakeholders. It is not the shareholder that we must give priority to. We must make provision for the welfare of the stakeholders too. Their voice must be heard too. So the right of the stakeholders that are established by law, those are the internal stakeholders, primary stakeholders. So through mutual agreement, we have to ensure that we make provision for good employment climate, job security, pay security, motivations, and anytime there is a dispute, this one can be resolved amicably before it degenerates to vital issue or damage the reputation of the company or paralyze activities in the organization. So because the essence of corporate governance here is that a representative of the workers' trade unions and that of the management can come together and resolve whatever issues that occur. That's what we call conflict resolution through collective bargaining. At the same time, principle 5 say there should be disclosure and transparency. Directors should not hide any information, no matter how small it is, to the shareholders and other board members. So that should be, in fact, that disclosure should be done timely. So the corporate governance framework should ensure that timely and accurate disclosure is made on all materials matter, investment, and many more. At the same time, the board responsibility, the corporate governance framework should ensure the strategic guidance of the company, the effective monitoring of management by the board, and all the board should be responsible and accountable. So what are the limitations of international code or statement of principles? So one of the limitations of the international code and principle is that, one, because they apply to all countries, they can only state general principles. So that means in some companies, there might be amendment to all this. Some companies might adapt their principles to it. So all different countries or states makes a little adjustment, and not that they are going to abide with the laid down principle in the international, because they cannot give detailed guidelines because of the peculiarity of local content. Some challenges that face companies in each state differs. Two, another limitation is that their main objective is to raise standard of corporate governance, which is, yes, in the worst country. They have less relevance for countries where corporate governance standards are above the minimum standard. I think I disagree with this, because the International Code of Corporate Governance is not really focused on governing governance in the worst countries. No, all the principles too are applicable to advanced, emerging, developing nations, even companies that are doing very well. So all the principles are applicable to them. And the last one is saying that the principle lack the legal power. So they said, unlike national laws and code of corporate governance, there is no regulatory authority for international statement of principle. So that means it cannot be enforced. So we have the board of directors. So the board of directors here, the girls talk about the board of directors, their fiduciary duty, what and what. But the major thing that the syllabus stress is this: delegation of power within a company. Delegation of power within a company. So when it's come to power in the company, without elements of doubt, within a company, all the powers are usually given to the board of directors. But there's a provision in the law, and even in practice, that the board of directors can constitute committee, they can delegate responsibility. Okay, let's proceed. For example, there is an article in the Standard Article of Association, Constitution of Nigeria Companies, that say that the board of directors then delegates some of its power to executive management. And executive management are responsible functions. So all powers in the company belongs to the directors, and they can use that power and position to delegate responsibilities. And all those responsibilities delegated must be properly executed. So once they have that power, they delegate. And we have that the role of the board of director is not to manage the company. This is the role of the management. And that's the reason why they are delegating all these functions and responsibilities to them. So specifying the role of the board of directors and making the board accountable for its performance in the role is a key aspect of corporate governance. So what are now the roles of the directors? Let's quickly look at the roles of the directors because of time. Roles of directors. Please take note, at least you must know minimum of 5 or 6. Under corporate governance, this role of directors, role of board committee comes out. Role of NED, N-E-D, non-executive committee, comes out very well. So what are the roles of director? 1, exercising leadership role. You can just say exercising leadership role. So first one, exercising leadership, enterprising, integrity, and judgment in its oversight. So this one means that to ensure continuity, sustainable growth, enhance performance and profitability of the company, including innovation and competitiveness. The board of directors, they must exercise leadership. They must use a simplified leadership style that will bring about harmonious relationship and collective commitment towards achievements of the company goals. And they must be enterprise. They must be result oriented. And at the same time, they must have probity, integrity, and judgment in the best interest of the company. Another role of the board is that ensuring that the board and its committees, we are not talking of risk committee, remuneration committee, and many more. The board and the committees act in the best interest of the company. Third one, ensuring compliance. This is very, very important. Ensuring adherence or compliance with the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and other applicable regulations. So the board of directors, the board are expected to do what? Consider and approve long-term and short-term strategies for the company. This is very key and germane. Ensuring establishment and implementation of succession plan. Without succession plan, the company will have problem. You must have a succession plan, and that's the reason why we have to ensure capacity development, train our staff. So there should be succession plan, appointment process, and remuneration structure. We must have it in place. So we have so many of them that we can look at, including providing oversight over information technology governance. So we now have ICSA guidelines, note on matter reserved for the board. This one I will have even discussed it together with the International Code of Corporate Governance. So we have the Institute of Chartered Secretary and Administration. That's what we call ICSA, Institute of Chartered Secretary and Administration guidelines on how we can have effective functioning of the board decision, effective board governance and supervision. So let's look at. So the corporate governance code and principle are not specific about what exactly decision-making responsibility of the board should be. But the Institute of Chartered Secretary and Administration, ICSA, has published a guideline note suggesting that in each company there should be a formal written list of matters for which the board will take decisions and will not delegate to management. So they discuss on some areas that the board of directors should not delegate. It is not all responsibility or tasks that you delegate. We all know that. So they now went further that this includes monitoring responsibility and decision-making responsibility. For example, that too, we can't delegate it. The monitoring responsibility and decision-making responsibility, we can't delegate it. So in the strategic management tool, strategic formulation, we can't delegate it, we can constitute a committee that look into that. Why the final decision will be for that directors and the shareholders, board of directors and the shareholders. So the board is responsible for the overall management of the company or group. And this involves what are the expected things to do? Approving the long-term objective and commercial strategy. You can see we cannot delegate this one to our subordinates. The approval of the long-term objective and commercial strategy of the company. 2, approving the annual budget and the capital expenditure budget. We cannot delegate it. 3, oversight of operation. The oversight of operations means to review the performance of the company or group. At the same time, another strategy and management that decision that the board cannot delegate is decision about expanding operation, new product development, market expansion, improvements in portfolio investment, diversification decision. They are the decision of the board of directors, the strategic apex. So it cannot be delegated at all. At the same time, decision about the structure and capital of the company cannot be delegated to committee or subordinates in the organization. Because look at it, the reason why it cannot be delegated is that decision about the approval of financial statements and results cannot be delegated by the director to subordinates. Approval of dividends policy, even the dividend policy that you have drawn up, have to be approved by the shareholders during the AGM. So at the same time, the board of directors cannot delegate treasury policy to junior staff. So internal control policy, financial control, and reporting, they are the responsibility that the directors cannot delegate. So we have many like that I put. So next we look at this interesting and beautiful topic, board structures. Board structure is a very simple topic that once you know it now, you have known it forever. You will not forget, you will retain it. If you come to an exam, I expect you within 5-10 minutes, you are done with board structure and go to the next question because it will be simplified. What do you mean by board structure? Board structure means uh, board structure means the organization structure that spell out how the management and supervisory functions will be carried out in the company by the executive and non-executive directors. So the board structure, we must know, varies in different countries across the globe. Because the board structure that one company is using here, another company might not use it. The board structure we are using in Nigeria, some companies in the UK might not use it. So this board structure varies. We have two types of board structure. Two types of board structure. We have unitary board structure. Unitary, that's what you are saying here. Unitary board structure. And the second one is two-tier board structure. Two-tier board structure. That two-tier board structure is what we call dual board structure. DUAL. There are two main types of board structure. We have unitary board structure, unitary. Unitary board structure. Another name for that unitary board structure is single board structure. Unitary board structure is also called single board structure. While the second one is two-tier board structure that we call dual board structure. Let's quickly look at them. They are very straightforward, extremely straightforward. See, in most countries, Companies have a unitary board, most companies. This means that there is a single board of directors. That is the meaning. When you call it unitary board, single board. So it means there is a single board of directors which is responsible for performing all the functions of the board. That is the meaning of unitary board structure. Single board of directors. And when we say single board of directors, that means that under the unitary board structure, the executive directors and the non-executive directors, they are not segregated, they are not separated. Both of them work collectively towards achieving the broad goals and objectives of the company. They have collective responsibility under unitary board. So activities are not degraded. So, but when we have the two-tier board in some countries, such as Germany and Netherlands, all or most large companies have two-tier board. When we come to two-tier board, we have two board of directors as against the unitary board that have one board of directors. So a two-tier board that is also called dual board structure consists of two board of directors, namely a management board and B, a supervisory board. So because we have two board of directors now, functions are segregated here. Why? Because the management board is responsible for oversight of management and business operations. And this management board is consists entirely of executive director. You can see ED. Under the two-tier board, it is the executive directors that play the management governance oversight functions and many more. And the chairman in the management board is the CEO. So let's say that again. The management board is responsible for the oversight of management. This oversight that we have been mentioning, meaning monitoring, supervision, and some other related function, oversight of management and business operations. It consists entirely of executive directors, and its chairman is the chief executive officer. So in under the two-tier board, just tell the examiner that the two-tier board, we have the management board and supervisory board. The management board is being supervised by the ED, executive director, in conjunction with the chairman, that is CEO. But in the supervisory board, that one is being managed by NED, non-executive director. The supervisory board is responsible for general oversight of the company and the management board. It consists entirely of non-executive director, and their own functions is to checks. They make some play some risk role, make some suggestion on strategy, and at the same time, majority of them as whistleblower, because we planted them there for check and balances. So the responsibility of both the management board and supervisory board should be well spelled out. So the comparison of unitary board and two-tier board, at times we can have it when they say which one is the best. It depends on the policy of the company and the one the company feel appropriate that they want to use. What are the advantages of the two-tier board? The two-tier board, we call it dual board, where we have the management board supervised by the executive director, and we have the supervisory board supervised by the NED. What is the advantages of the two-tier board? It separates two different roles for the board. What are the roles? The management board is responsible for operational issues, while the supervisory board is responsible for monitoring of performance. So there is segregation of duties, and this one reduces conflict. Another advantage of the two-tier board, dual board, is that it is an appropriate structure for a company that recognizes the interests of different stakeholders group. so that the non-executive director are relevant. The executive directors, they have their own roles too. So what are the advantages of the unitary board? Don't forget that in the unitary board, there is no separation of the management and supervisory board. That function is being performed together by the executive director and non-executive director. So what is the advantage of the unitary board? A unitary board can be small in size because there is no requirement to appoint directors who represent stakeholders' interests in the group. And that one will help us in making faster decision making. Number two, the second advantage of the unitary board. In a unitary board structure, it is easier for the non-executive director, NED, and the executive director to work cooperatively. So this one will remove conflicts because the two of them normally have conflict together. Three is that unitary boards work towards a common purpose. It provides sense of direction, common purpose, team unity, teamwork, succession plan. So after that, we look at the composition of the board of directors. Composition of the board of directors. I've listed the composition of the board of directors. Even when you are looking at, when you are listening to the recorded version, you know that I've mentioned this. The composition of the board of directors, we say we must have a balanced board of directors. And at the same time, the board of directors must comprises of a chairman who may be an executive director, but is more usually a non-executive director. I've clarified there. Most board of directors, the chairman is always non-executive director, and that one will aid accountability and transparency. So composition of the board, we have a chairman. Sometimes, that means not common, popular, a deputy chairman. 3, executive officer. 4, other executive officer. 5, NED, non-executive directors. So at the same time, we have a board committee, but those board committees should have required skills and experience. I've put it there. We have the board and its committee should have the appropriate balance of skills, experience, independence, knowledge, and high level of commitment. And we must know that the board of directors should not be too ambiguous. It's not compulsory we have large number of board of directors. And that's the reason why some part of the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance suggests that the board of directors should have less than 5 members and not exceed 15, and which is being reviewed. So the executive director that we have been mentioning, EX, executive director, you know, they are the one that supervise management functions and the rest. So you must know that the executive directors, they are full-time staff of the company, and they have the executive power and responsibilities. So these executive directors, they are paid robust salary. They have incentives given to them. At the same time, the executive directors too, they are being given performance-related benefits like shares and many more. But the non-executive directors, they are not full-time staff of the company. No. Non-executive directors who do not have any executive management responsibility in the company. So majority of them, their position is terminal position, subject to renewal. Some company, what they will do is that they will calculate the number of years the director wants to use. That is the tenure that they will give the non-executive directors. So the non-executive directors, They don't receive performance-related benefit and incentives like the executive directors, so that there won't be superiority conflicts and derailment of focus. So we have independent director. Those people that we call independent director, all directors should show independence of character. They should be able to hold on their views and judgments, and should be able to express their personal opinion with convictions. So that is what we call independence. You must exercise that. And when they now ask you what are independent directors, we have some independent directors that they are being appointed to the board. So they assist all the members of the directors. And majorly when there are critical issues, disagreements, the independent directors are the categories of people that will meet the chairman of the board to ensure that all these issues are resolved. And people that you appointed as independent directors, they must not be a staff of the company. They must not be a staff of the company, and they should be able to work independently. So, added to that is that in Nigeria, an independent director is defined as a non-executive director who is not a substantial shareholders in the company, because they must be transparent. They must work with neutrality. They must be accountable and work as a whistleblower. They must have the ability to protect the interests of the investors that are regarded as shareholders. So as a result of that, they must not be a shareholders of the company. And even those ones that have, there's one exception given. When you read that act, they say that each of our shareholding must not exceed 0.1%. So what is the value of 0.1%? 0.1% of the company's paid up capital. An independent director, NED, is not a representative of the shareholders who is able to significantly influence management decisions. So we have been told here, and that's the reason why ICAN at times when they're giving some questions on this area, when they give you scenario, they might tell you the newly appointed NED is a cousin to the executive directors. It's because of these principles or laws. They said the independent director NED should not be a member of the immediate family of an individual who is or has been employed in an executive capacity in the company. Must not have any relations among the executive directors. So I implore you to please check this area. So then we have board balance. What is the meaning of board balance? Board balance. Board balance. So what we mean by board balance is that board balance means that the board of director composition should be adequate, and there should be diversity in age, gender, ethnics, religion, and the rest. So the board balance is not saying that there should be a balance of power of the appointed directors. We must not give all powers to the chairman of the board. All powers should not be given to the CEOs. We must ensure that we balance this, because if one person is too powerful among them, it can cause havoc for the company. I give you one example under that. We look at it. Okay, the status of the director as independent or non-independent is significant for companies that are required to comply with the code of corporate governance. A general principle of good corporate governance is that there should be a suitable balance of individuals on the board Board balance. A board should consist of directors with suitable skills, experience, expertise. So where we are now going is this. When we have directors of this suitable skills, experience, expertise, knowledge, education, however, this is where I'm going. There should also be a balance of power, and that's the meaning of board balance. Balance of power on the board, so that no individual or small group of individuals can dominate decision making by the board. We must have a diversified board. It should be balanced in gender and the rest. And we must ensure that power does not concentrate in the hands of individual or group of individuals, because it will lead to the collapse of the company. Look at this example that I gave you here to explain board balance. Example, Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell. Because this man caused havoc to the company. The case of Robert Maxwell is notorious in United Kingdom corporate history. During the 1980s, Maxwell built up a major publishing group, which included Mirror Group newspapers, the US publisher Macmillan, and the New York Daily News. So Mirror Group newspaper became a listed UK company, but the other companies in the group remain private-owned companies. Maxwell was reported to have been a tyrannical leader, autocrat, can you see? Tyrannical leader of the company who dominated the board of directors of the companies within the group. In November 1991, Mr. Maxwell died in a mysterious circumstances during cruise of the Canary Islands. After his death, it was found that he has misappropriated about £900 million from the pension funds of his company, using the money to fund business expansion and to support group companies that were not financially difficult. In 1992, the Maxwell Company in the UK and USA were forced to file for bankruptcy or insolvency. A subsequent investigation found that there were no proper corporate or financial control to prevent Maxwell from doing what he has done. So this case was one of the several corporate collapse that led to recognition of the need for a balance of power on the board. In fact, I don't want it to be too lengthy. You discover even Maxwell too. We have what we call uh, uh, leadership inheritance. Some family, son, and whatever take some leadership positions. And because there is no balance of power, he was even using the company money to finance some businesses that is not his own.
Mhm.
So there should be a balance of power. So that one will bring about check and balances. So board balance again means to ensure that power and information are not concentrated in one or two individuals. There should be a strong preference on the board of both executive and non-executive. So we are rounding up. So if they ask you what do we call board diversity, board diversity is in the syllabus. Board diversity means that in simple terms, in simple terms, Mustafa Serat, Emmanuel Okeme, please my scholar, mute please. So what is board diversity? In simple terms, diversity means having a range of people, many people that are different from each other. Categories might include age, race, gender. So what we call board diversity is that the composition of the board of directors Apart from being balanced, the board of directors must have different individual, be it executive and non-executive directors, that will be part of the board member. They must be of different age brackets, different race, different gender, educational background, professional qualifications, experience, personal attitude, marital status, religion, just to mention a few. This is what we call diversified board. You should not just be only Muslim or Christians. You should not just be only Awusas, whatever. It must have diversity that consider different age, different race, different gender, ethnicity, educational background, professional experience, and many more. So the benefit of the board diversity is that when we have different age and many more, different experience, it will help. It will bring about more effective decision making. Yes, there will be a robust decision making by a diversified board. And two is that it will bring about better utilization of talent pool for non-executive directors. And it will promote effective corporate governance. So the demerits of the board diversity is that there is increased conflict and friction, which promotes crisis. Because their numbers are many. Just like what we are experiencing in state assembly, what we are experiencing in senate, what we are experiencing in house of rep. We have different people that come from different political background, different race, religion, ethnics, education, and what have you. There is always a conflict of interest, and majorly over some issues. And it is a welcome development. It's for the betterness of the company if uh, the intention is genuine. And there's one thing we call tokenism, meaning that one means inferiority complex that can come as a result of age, qualification, experience. We have some people that they are just coming up, they are young guys that are appointed to the board. Most of these people that have been in the industry before, some might be a governor, some might be a minister, whatever, they are part of the board. So they use that one to show complex, so that some of these young and board members will not have much say. So that is what we call tokenism. Or maybe I should just let's look at the meaning together again. Tokenism meaning that rather than taking an active role and contributing positively to decision making, board minorities, can you say board minorities, may feel they are only there to make up the numbers and fulfill a quota. This can lead to an undervaluing of skill and suppress contributions to the organization. So with this, we have come to the end of our lectures today. And I love the fact that at least we look at another aspect of the syllabus, which is governance, rather than taking uh, strategy. So upper week, because I will inform you on the platform. I know next week we are going to have case study. That should be the last Saturday of the month. We should have case study. So this material will be dropped. So by next week, by upper week, when we are having our lecture, and maybe I will drop the material ahead. We have to ensure that maybe we balance it again now. So which we are having a balanced and diversified board. We can look at risk management, or we combine risk management and strategy as a topic. So that one we equally add value. So I implore us to start reading now, please. The exam is fast approaching. There's no time. By His grace, by tomorrow now, everybody will go back to work. Yeah, we are making earnings to put a food on the table, pay for your tuition fee and some other thing, add value to life. So Monday to Friday we are at work. Saturday, Sunday, all our time we are occupied with lectures. We hardly have time to read. So, but out of no time, let that spirit be high now. Let that be commitment. Find ways of reading all these things. Don't pile it up. Because some of us are doing 2 courses, 3. We have some that are doing 4 courses or 5. So I wish you best of luck. Enjoy the rest of your day.